No one in the galaxy remembered when humanity had first been classified as harmless. The designation existed so long that it had become doctrine, cited by admirals and historians alike with the same certainty as gravity or vacuum. Humans were mammals from a mid-grade death world, bipedal and short-lived, loud in speech but quiet in power. They occupied a narrow string of systems on the outer arm of civilized space and had survived not by dominance but by accommodation. They traded efficiently. They complied quickly. They protested verbally and surrendered materially. Over time, the galaxy stopped listening to what humans said and began watching only what they did, and what humans did, for generations, was avoid war, die in a galaxy that revered expansion as strength and extinction as inevitability. That choice was interpreted not as wisdom, but as submission. The Karathal Dominion had been the loudest voice in shaping that opinion. Their empire spanned nearly 800 systems, enforced by fleets whose doctrine was simple: overwhelm, occupy, erase memory. Species that resisted were erased from records within decades. Species that complied were absorbed and stripped of any ability to resist later. The Dominion did not hate humanity. Hate required effort. Humanity simply did not matter. The border systems where humans lived had been spared for a long time, not out of mercy, but inconvenience. Human space lay between two regions the Dominion had already pacified. The humans were small, their fleets outdated, their planets lightly defended. There was no urgency, no profit worth the redeployment of even a fraction of a Dominion battle group, until there was. The system designated H317 by human astronomers was nothing special. 1 star, 3 planets, 1 habitable world with a modest population, primarily civilian. Its value lay not in minerals or position, but in proximity. It sat directly along a hyperspace corridor the Dominion wished to stabilize for faster transit. Under Dominion logic, such obstacles were removed. The official demand transmitted to the system was formal, concise, and final. Evacuate within 40 standard hours. Surrender orbital infrastructure. Accept Dominion governance or forfeit the planet. The humans replied within 3. Their response did not include threats. It did not include mobilization. It was a diplomatic appeal, citing treaties the Dominion no longer recognized, asking for arbitration, offering trade concessions, requesting time. It was, by any measure, reasonable. The Dominion commander overseeing the region read the message once, then dismissed it without response. The human reply confirmed everything he already believed. They argued with words because they lacked anything else. The strike order was issued 17 minutes later. Orbital platforms were destroyed first. Then communication arrays. Then the planet's surface-based defense systems, which attempted to fire exactly once before being annihilated. The Dominion fleet did not target cities initially. They waited. They allowed the humans below to understand what was happening. Panic spread across the planet in waves. Civilian ships attempted evacuation and were vaporized before clearing atmosphere. Medical stations broadcast emergency frequencies that went unanswered. The Dominion did not jam communications. They did not need to. When the bombardment began, it was methodical. Energy lancers carved lines across continents, targeting population centers with mathematical precision. The Dominion had long perfected extermination without waste. They did not scorch entire worlds if it was unnecessary. They broke them just enough to ensure compliance was impossible. In less than 8 hours, the planet's surface infrastructure ceased to function. When it was done, the Dominion commander logged the system as pacified and moved his fleet onward. The humans did not retaliate. That silence was louder than any distress signal. Across the surrounding systems, non-Dominion species took notice. Some had traded with humans. Some had shared borders. None intervened. Intervention against the Dominion was suicide, and humanity had given no indication that it expected help. Human channels went dark. No fleets emerged. No declarations followed. For weeks, nothing happened at all. The Dominion's king received the report during a routine council session and barely acknowledged it. One minor species reduced to irrelevance was not news. The action was recorded as a successful expansion event and added to the ever-growing ledger of absorbed territories. Humanity was reclassified from minor compliant civilization to pacified remnant. A footnote.in the halls of the Dominion. Scholars would later debate whether the decision to downgrade humanity had been the first true mistake. At the time, it felt inconsequential. On Earth, far from Dominion space and far deeper than any alien intelligence suspected, the silence was not confusion. It was containment. Humanity had learned long ago that survival in a hostile galaxy required more than strength. It required perception management. The first human interstellar probes had encountered violence immediately. Early colonies had been burned not because they were threatening, but because they were visible. Humanity adapted. They retreated inward. They centralized authority. They built fleets in places that could not be seen from known hyperspace routes. They learned to appear small, and when H317 burned, every hidden sensor array across human-controlled dark space recorded it in perfect clarity, and no emergency councils were broadcast. No public announcements were made. The human population was told only that contact had been lost, and that investigation was ongoing. Panic was prevented not through deception, but through trust. Humanity had endured losses before. They had endured extinction events on their homeworld. They understood waiting, deep beneath Earth's surface, in a chamber that had no official designation and no public acknowledgement, the highest command authority humanity possessed assembled without ceremony. They did not argue over whether to respond. That question had already been answered generations ago. They reviewed the data. Satellite footage. Weapon signatures. Casualty projections. There was no anger in the room. Anger was inefficient. What existed instead was a collective recognition that a line long anticipated had finally been crossed. Human doctrine did not revolve around deterrence. Deterrence required an enemy capable of restraint. Humanity's war philosophy was built around a simpler truth. Some opponents only learned through consequence. The woman who entered the chamber last did so without escort or announcement. She wore no ceremonial uniform, only the matte black command insignia of strategic operations. Her presence altered the room's attention without a word spoken. She had not been chosen for her gender, nor because her appointment would shock alien observers. Those considerations were irrelevant. She had been chosen because every conflict she had overseen ended quickly, decisively, and with minimal loss of human life. She did not escalate wars. She terminated them. She listened as the final datasets were presented. She asked no questions. When the projections finished, she spoke only once. "Confirm the chain of command," she said. The answer was immediate. "Confirm autonomous authority," she added. "Granted." Only then did she stand. Human fleets began to move within hours, though no light in known space yet reflected it. Vessels constructed over decades disengaged from asteroid cradles and deep space docks. Crews who had trained for a war most believed would never come took their assigned stations without hesitation. Orders were transmitted through quantum-encrypted channels that had never once been compromised. There was no public declaration of war. Humanity did not announce its intentions. Announcement was a courtesy extended to equals. The general reviewed the final target list alone. She did not prioritize Dominion fleets. Fleets could be rebuilt. She did not prioritize infrastructure. Infrastructure invited reconstruction. Her focus was singular. The king, Dominion political theory rested on the absolute authority of its monarch. The empire was not federated. It was not resilient. It was a vertical structure enforced by fear and tradition. Remove the apex, and the system would not collapse immediately, but it would fracture beyond repair. Humanity did not seek revenge. Revenge was emotional. Humanity sought resolution. When the human fleet finally crossed into known space, they did so without fanfare. The first logistics world was written off as an accident. The Galactic Empire had grown too large to notice every failure immediately. Entire systems existed only to move fuel, food, and data from one place to another. When one of them went quiet, bureaucrats blamed aging infrastructure or local incompetence. Repair fleets were scheduled. Investigations opened. The incident was categorized as inconvenient, not alarming. Then a second world failed. Then a third. Each time, the pattern was identical. No battle. No explosions visible from orbit. No distress calls. Just silence, followed by reports of total operational paralysis. Ships stranded without propulsion. Weapons platforms unable to track targets. Artificial intelligences locked into recursive errors they could not exit. The Empire finally paid attention when a core-ward supply route collapsed entirely, stranding 3 battle groups in empty space with no enemy in sight. Still, they did not suspect humanity. Humans were quiet. Humans were small. Humans had lost. Imperial doctrine did not account for an enemy that refused to announce itself, to be why the time analysts began to notice that every failed system shared one detail: recent human commercial traffic. It was already too late to respond conventionally. Human trade vessels had always been welcome. They were punctual, compliant, and boring. No one had ever bothered to deeply audit their cargo manifests. No one had imagined that civilian hulls could be weaponized in ways that did not involve guns. The first open battle occurred 78 days after the auction. An Imperial patrol intercepted a human convoy that had ignored a new inspection mandate. The patrol commander expected compliance or retreat. Instead, the human ships powered down completely. Drifted. Passive. Non-threatening. Boarding teams were dispatched, none returned. Moments later, every Imperial system within the patrol's network range shut down simultaneously. Weapons. Shields. Life support backups. The patrol did not explode. It suffocated, silently, as systems designed to never fail did exactly that. The human ships powered up and left. Footage of the incident spread faster than Imperial sensors could suppress it. For the first time, fear entered the conversation. Not fear of invasion, but fear of helplessness. Empires could fight enemies. They could not fight absence. They could not fight silence. The Empire attempted communication. Messages were sent on every frequency, framed as demands, then warnings, then offers. Humanity did not respond. Not once. Not even to reject them. The silence was not arrogance. It was process. Behind that silence, the war unfolded like an equation being solved. Human strikes never targeted civilians directly. Cities remained standing. Populations remained alive. Instead, humanity removed function. Shipyards that could not fabricate. Academies that could not teach. Governments that could not communicate beyond their own atmospheres. Species were not bombed into extinction. They were reduced to planetary isolation, permanently trapped beneath skies they could no longer leave. The Empire mobilized fleets. They found nothing to fight. Human vessels did not hold territory. They did not defend positions. They appeared, acted, and vanished. Attempts to predict their movements failed because the humans were not reacting. They were executing a plan written before the first shot was fired. Only after half the Empire's outer sectors became inert did someone remember the 4 generals. They were brought forward as leverage. Broadcast images showed them alive, unharmed, offered back in exchange for cessation. The Empire framed it as mercy again, as reason, as negotiation. Humanity responded for the first time. The response was a single data packet sent to every Imperial channel simultaneously. It contained no threats, no insults, only a historical archive, records of extinct species, worlds that had once auctioned prisoners, cultures that had normalized cruelty, civilizations that believed themselves permanent. The message ended with one sentence, translated perfectly into every Imperial language. Return is no longer relevant. The Empire panicked, factions splintered. Border systems attempted unilateral surrender. Others launched blind retaliatory strikes at human colonies. Those strikes failed. Not because human defenses were stronger, but because the fleets could not reach their targets. Navigation data corrupted itself mid-jump. Engines refused commands. Crews found themselves alive, armed, and completely useless. Only then did the Empire understand humanity was not fighting a war of destruction. They were dismantling an ecosystem. The rescue of the 4 generals happened without announcement. On 4 separate worlds, on 4 separate days, human operatives appeared where no one believed infiltration possible. Not commandos crashing through defenses, not dramatic assaults, just quiet failures. Doors unlocking, fields collapsing, guards discovering that their weapons no longer recognized them as authorized users. The generals were extracted professionally. No embraces, no speeches. Each was brief during transit, given the same concise explanation. Humanity had already crossed the point of no return. None of them objected. They returned to command only long enough to confirm that the plan was sound, that nothing had been overlooked, that the outcome was, indeed, extinction. When the final phase began, the galaxy noticed all at once. Humanity activated technologies they had never shared, never traded, never demonstrated. Not weapons in the traditional sense, but instruments of denial. Stars seeded with devices that subtly altered fusion stability just enough to make long-term habitation impossible. Jump corridors rendered mathematically unsafe. Entire regions of space reclassified by physics itself as unreachable. Species that surrendered were spared bombardment. They were not spared consequence. They were restricted. Watched. Reduced to pre-spaceflight conditions over generations, not by force, but by environment. Humanity did not trust morality to memory. They trusted it to impossibility. The Galactic Empire ceased to exist less than a year after the auction. There was no final battle. No throne world burning. No emperor dragged before a tribunal. The empire simply stopped functioning, its parts isolated, starving, irrelevant. In the aftermath, humanity spoke again, not to boast, not to rule. They released a doctrine. Auctions were banned galaxy-wide. Slavery became an extinction-level offense. The concept of ownership over sapient beings was redefined as an act of war against humanity itself, and no enforcement fleet was assigned. None was needed. The galaxy remembered. The 4 generals disappeared from public record. They declined positions, honors, monuments. Their role was finished. Humanity did not celebrate its executioners. It archived them. Years later, scholars would debate whether humanity had gone too far, whether annihilation had been necessary, whether mercy could have been shown, but no one ever restarted an auction. No empire ever tested the boundary again, because the galaxy had learned something simple and something final. Humanity did not seek dominance. They only removed threats, and when humanity decided something must never happen again, extinction was not hatred, it was policy.